It's good to have all of you all in the audience and a packed house in the front. It's good to see that we've got everyone ready for the next session, which is an interesting one, because we don't have one moderator, we have two of my colleagues doing this one. It's all about women and entrepreneurship. It is well known that women-led businesses have a high chance of success. However, the fact remains that fewer women-led businesses are able to build scale. What is the missing link? The answer often lies in systemic barriers, including unequal access to capital, deeply ingrained gender biases in funding ecosystems that were alluded to in the previous conversation right at the end, and limitations within professional networks that really disproportionately affect female entrepreneurs. Now, that was, of course, me using AI to give you an introduction, since we did speak about it in the previous panel. But to understand, to dissect and analyze where that missing link is, I'd like to call on stage our next panel. Soumya Rajan, founder and CEO, Waterfield Advisors. Amisha Vora, chairperson and managing director, Prabhudas Leeladhar. Devita Saraf, chairperson and CEO, The View Group. Madhura Das Gupta Sinha, founder, Aspire for Her. This session will be moderated by two of my colleagues, Ajita Sashidhar and V. Keshav Dev. A huge round of applause, please.
So I'm back on the stage again. Thank you so much to all my dear panelists for making it for this panel. And so the topic is women in entrepreneurship. And I had a lot of morose questions, as Devita told me in the morning. She said, why can't you ask some, feel-good questions? So I think I'll do exactly that. I have bought her advice. So I would start with you, Devita, since the suggestion came from you.
Ajita, you'll have to tell the audience what am I doing here. So I'm filling the diversity quotient.
Kudos to you. So I would start with you, Devita. So you have been a women entrepreneur all your life. And so what is really unique about you? What is the uniqueness that you have brought in onto the table? Because again, you deal with a business, you lead a business which is highly male-dominated. So in this male-dominated world, what kind of uniqueness have you brought to the table?
Well, I dominate the men. So first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I've shared this story with your team, but I must share this in public. When I was in school and college, I was inspired back then that one day I would be in the Fortune MPW list. And when I was studying in California, most people on their undergrad dorm rooms would put maybe a poster of an actor or a singer or a cricketer, I don't know, whatever player. And I used to every year pull out the Fortune MPW list and then put it over my bed and have that inspire me. And thank you. And I am a serial offender. I have been on this list before, but I think it's just the greatest honor for women, working women, to be on this list. And the fact that they aspire for this, and you really pick out your list well. So congratulations to everyone here and in the audience for being there. I think what I feel women add differently to business, and this is something that has given us at View Technologies a core competence, is one, we are very much driven by vision and purpose. We want to do things which are customer-centric. We want to do things which are building about the right company culture. There is a purpose of also giving back much more strongly. There's a lot of creativity in our work. There's a lot more senses than just the science. So when I entered the world of technology, and I saw it was this sort of, male bastion of just one-upmanship on whose technology is faster, better, but really missed the boat on building a product that people loved, I felt that this was the time to be there. And what was very interesting is when I started this company saying I want to blend the worlds of luxury and technology together, most people didn't think that the twain could meet. And it took me about 8 or 9 years to really get the business off the ground. And then once the J-curve started, it reached to being a 1,000 crore company. So having that vision, I think as a woman, it's important that we really add our uniqueness, as you said, our specialty, our empathy, our vision into any business we do. Because there are so many businesses these days which are just boring, unnecessarily loss-making, competitive. And I don't think that many women-owned businesses lose as much money. So for sure, I think we all have our eyes on the prize, and that is profit. And so we are here to be there for the long term, build a good company, have a great company culture, keep your customers happy, and most importantly, make sure you remain on the Fortune MPW list.
Thank you. Now let me come to the not so feel-good questions. So Madhura, you run Aspire for Her, wherein you help people kind of incubate businesses. And again, all of us know that it's not easy to run a women-led business. And more than often, it is the women who does not have the confidence to go ahead with her business plan. Family takes priority, and I mean, for her, it is like just like a time pass kind of a thing, as they say. They do not take it seriously. So what do you do? Like, how do you you must be mentoring a lot of them. So what do you exactly tell them?
First of all, thank you so much, Ajita. Thank you for having us here. It's indeed a pride and privilege to represent Aspire for Her on this very, very august forum. My name is Madhura, and I'll just talk a little bit about what Aspire for Her really does, and perhaps that will answer your question. So I was a banker for 25 years, and like Saurav mentioned, I was looking at the data in terms of women's economic participation and feeling very sad and disappointed because India's women in the workforce participation was actually steadily declining over the past many years. I was surrounded by the best and the brightest women in the world in India, and I didn't think they deserved to be quite there. So I thought somebody needs to solve this problem, and that somebody should be me. So I started Aspire for Her to unleash that $1 trillion opportunity that lies latent in India if more women get to work. We started with the vision to add 1 million women to the workforce, to the economy by 2025. And this was in 2020. So 2025 seemed to be a faraway, distant year somewhere in the future. Well, today it's 2025. And we currently are a community of 831,000 women in India. We motivate women to enter and stay in the workforce. And we use a unique model to build their confidence, to build their conviction. And that model talks about mentors and role models. That model talks about skilling, upskilling, reskilling themselves to get ready for tomorrow's India. That model talks about career previews and business resources, which they can dip into as a confident professional in this world. And that model also talks about the community being front and center, so that the community connects with each other, motivates each other, elevates each other, and ensures that they solve problems together, creatively and collectively. So that is what we do at Aspire for Her. This is our magic mantra, this 5-point model, where all that we do is open doors for these women so that they are ready to strive into the world. We have 25 communities, but our favorite community is that of job creators, because we like women to be job creators, not just job seekers. And this community is called Entreprenari. Entreprenari stands for the ambition of every woman in India. Thank you.
On that note of creating jobs, I think, Soumya, if you could share, you're one of the very few entrepreneurs who have created a name in the wealth management space, and also the one who had a bumper fundraise, an equity raise of 150 crores. So if you could share your take on that.
So thank you so much for having me as part of the panel, and of course a warm round of congratulations to all the winners here today. When I think about a lot of what I've heard in terms of what has been shared by Devita as well as by Madhura, when you think about entrepreneurship, uh, it's actually quite tough. It's a very difficult journey to embark upon. I spent the first 17 years of my career in the corporate sector. I was in traditional banking, and then I said that one fine day I turned 40 and I realized that the industry that I was in was one, male-dominated, but it was also an industry which I thought was quite a difficult and dirty industry, quote unquote, because it was in many ways driven by commissions that you received based and pushing products into client portfolios when the clients really didn't need that. And I felt that we needed to change that. So when I think about entrepreneurship for myself, I think about the fact that what you need first is courage, because without that, you can't take that next step. And that courage comes because you have family support, but you also need to dig very deep into the mental resolve that you have and the self-belief that you need. And I remember when I started Waterfield and the business model was completely different because we were advisors, we would only take our fees from our client. The second thing that was important to me, which was a little bit about what Devita said, is around integrity and its values. And I think women bring that uniquely, which is a little different. So courage is one for me, integrity and values.
How easy was it for you to get the conversations going, especially when you wanted some investors on board or you were making a pitch to a client?
It was pretty tough. And I think in the earlier panel, there was a comment that Preeti had made that capital is gender neutral. So I have a take for what she said as well as what was shared by Vaishali. I do think that it's tougher for women to raise capital. It's tougher specifically because we don't have enough women on the other side as investors. Every time I was making a pitch, there was only a man or a male person at the other end. So for women to even get to the point of making a pitch is really hard. I have done 4 rounds of capital raising at Waterfield. The first 3 rounds were family offices or basically friends. I did the first institutional round only 14 years after I started the company because I was not sure whether I was ready to have an institutional investor. And I also kept doubting myself that I would be ready to kind of be responsible and also achieve all the expectations that were set of me. So for women, I think you are inherently sitting with doubts first. But once you've made that mental shift, then there's no looking back. And that's where I am right now.
Amisha, in your case, you hail from a traditional broking industry, but you also created history by, I would say, management buyout. Tell us that story. How easy was it?
Absolutely. That's what I would say, that raising equity capital is difficult, but doing leverage buyout
Is easier.
no, it's even difficult to sit on the debt equal to your 30 years of assets. I'm sure it's not an easy decision. And to make all the bankers agree from 4 promoter personal guarantee to 1 women personal guarantee for the line of credit that we get, I'm sure it is not easy. And of course, to make your all partners agree, who are any which way ready to sell.
Can you share some anecdotes? Because they are very traditional promoters. Prabhudas Leeladhar is not an institution which has been around for a while.
So I started being a chartered accountant into equity research, moved on to institutional equity business, moved on and added investment banking within the fold of Prabhudas Leeladhar. And as I did this too, which turned out to be hugely profitable, I got about 24% sweat equity stake.
Okay.
And then...
And that was a first in that sense for someone getting a sweat equity stake?
Of course. And as I kept adding business, somewhere a little mismatch happened between the ambition and the passion and the speed at which I wanted to drive the business and my other partners. They were all agreeable to sell it to a foreign platform or a multinational or a bank, but selling back to me was definitely an issue. So it took me quite a while to get a yes to sell to me, any which way when they wanted to sell. And this is what I really liked, that not only my team remained 100 out of 100% intact, as what I said, we are under regulations of RBI, SEBI, BSE, NSE, IRDA. Everybody agreed to give me the permission, and all the bankers stood by, and someone, a proper institution, agreed to give me a leverage buyout. Why I'm really narrating is, in this entire journey, I had many questions about myself, that at this age, will I be able to really pull this kind of work, hours, which I continuously did even before. But I never thought that I'm a woman, whether they will take me seriously, or he's a man, whether he'll take me seriously. So one message to me is very clear, that if I don't remain in my boundaries of being a woman and I talk sense, the opposite person will have to talk sense. And fortunately, in last 2 years, I managed to repay my debt. I did one small round of fundraising from 96, now I am at 90%. I added teams, and I'm sure now I'm ready for a larger fundraise.
Soumya, I mean, taking that discussion forward, you said raising capital for women is difficult. So when you have those discussions, what do the men in the room say? I mean, why don't they want to fund a women-led business?
I don't think it's necessarily that they don't want to fund a woman-led business. And I think there is, for instance, a Harvard study that's happened, which actually speaks about the kind of questions that you're asked. And the study actually says that there are two kinds of questions in investor pitches. One tend to be promotion-led, which talks about growth, which talks about scale, which talks about ambition. And you then have another set of questions, which is what they call prevention questions, which are, for instance, talk about risk. So what tends to happen for women is that they get mostly asked the prevention questions. And this is research which is backing this. And men tend to get asked the promotion questions, and therefore you're able to express yourself in terms of, this is my vision, this is what I want to build, this is what I grow, this is what I want to do and build and grow. So for instance, when I was raising capital, what I would always do is if I saw a prevention question, I would always turn it around to say, position it more in terms of growth. Just to give you an example, in wealth management, we get our fees as a link to our assets under advisory. So what you would want is a question to talk about your growth and how the assets are growing. Instead of which, the question that I was asked was, well, you are getting paid as a result of markets, and markets fluctuate. And if markets go down, then your revenue will go down. So I had to say, well, while the revenue will go down, we will also be looking at how we garner more assets, or we cross-sell other services, and then talk about revenue growth and how we could actually achieve that. So it is how you actually move the conversation as well. But ultimately, I do come back to what Preeti said in the earlier discussion, is that capital is actually gender neutral at the end of the day. It's just that we have to be confident when we are pitching our business case, because we are competing with everyone. It doesn't make a difference whether you're a man or a woman. If you've got the right business model, if you've got the right vision, if you've got the right management team, you will get that capital.
Devita, you had any of those issues? Capital came easy in some sense because of a legacy business? Because of a legacy business.
Well, I raised 25 lakhs from the family and raised it to 960 crores. So I don't think that capital came easy, and that's a little biased to just assume. Absolutely not. I think when I started out the company, I knew that I had either two currencies, either use time or I use money. One is where I can raise money fast and really grow, or I can take my time and build the brand and keep expenses under control, and then make sure that, we are extremely capital efficient on our own. Two things happened as the company grew. Was I did try and raise money. No one gave me any money. I will not.
Why didn't they give? I mean, was it because you're a lady or was it because of the business?
I think what happens is when you meet any potential business partner or advisor, whoever, there has to be that click. You have to know that they get you and you get them. I couldn't tell that the reason they didn't give me money is because I'm a woman, or because they weren't seeing the vision for the premium business, which now suddenly the newspapers are all about premiumization, or because they felt that, India is not the market to build a high-end tech brand. So you can't really go back to people and say, oh, by the way, what is the reason you didn't give me money? The idea is just that, okay, even if I take their money, I'm also giving up that kind of control. And as an entrepreneur, I've always had a strong vision of what I wanted to do. I mean, this December, I complete 20 years of having started this company. And I've had that thought that if I get in too much money from the outside, the biggest challenge I would face is I would have to pivot too much to what the investors would want. Because at the end of the day, when you need liquidity for growth, you're also giving up control. So there's a very interesting case that class we had at Harvard Business School that said, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? Do you want to own 100% of a 100 crore company or 20% of a 1,000 crore company? And because I was very clear on my vision on what I wanted, I realized at the end of the day, even if I raise the money, what are the strings attached with it? So we decided to be actually very capital efficient. And as of right now, it's a completely debt-free company. I have no bank loans. And we are profitable and we can pay our own bills. And thank you, Aarti. But it's interesting. As in, I think the women part of business is there's a lot more conscientiousness. Whether it's our money, whether it's someone else's money, we really care to give back. And if I felt that my vision and someone's vision didn't match, I wouldn't take their money and waste it. I think all the money that went into startups and unicorns across India, had it gone to more women, we would not have been having the kind of economy that we have today. So next time, if you want to invest with a woman, invest less, but make sure that the investment is not going to go waste. Because we definitely, and I can guarantee and say this, women do carry ourselves this weight to, responsibility, purpose. There are very few of us out there in the corporate world as Aspire for Her is doing. And we find it a responsibility to run very capital efficient, strong businesses. Find me a company, women owned, that is just wasting money or wasting opportunity, and you won't. Speaking of which, somebody wants to give me money and has the same vision that I do, why not? You know where to reach me. And as entrepreneurs, we're always opportunists, we're always open.
Madhura, I would like to come to you. Entrepreneury has really small businesses. They're micro enterprises. So how do you motivate the women there not to give up? Because it's very easy for them to give up because it's almost like a cottage industry. So it's very easy for them to give up. So how do you motivate them to kind of, scale up their business?
So I'll give you a small example, maybe with a story, and that will actually tell you how entrepreneurship truly works in the heartland of India. And this is the story of my inspiration. Her name is Preeti Kate, and I met her way back in 2021. Just after she lost her very young husband to COVID. Preeti had never worked in her life before, and she had aging parents and in-laws to take care of and 2 children. And at one point in time, Preeti was actually contemplating taking her own life. So she was literally with her back against the wall, and she did not know how the family would survive. So Preeti joined our community. That time we started a community called Not Alone, which was meant only for women who had lost their primary breadwinners to COVID. And Preeti slowly started consuming all our resources. She started talking to her mentors. We were calling them anchors for the sake of this community, because the anchors were literally there at all points in time, morning and day and night, to be with them. She started looking at various options, and she's in this small place called Dhule in Maharashtra. And one day she decided that she wanted to start something on her own. She wanted to be her own boss, and she walked into her children's abacus class and she started her own abacus class. Now this is as small as you can get. She started with 5 kids whose parents trusted her, and today she runs this abacus class very successfully out of Dhule. She has 170 kids who are her students. She is earning enough to do well for herself, for her family, for her in-laws, and she's saving money every month.
So it's all about grit and determination, right?
And resilience, and having that community which you know is there with you. So Preeti drew a lot of strength from the community, from her mentors, from the resources. She realized she was truly not alone. And I think that is what we try to do for every person who joins Entrepreneury.
Amisha, I would now like to come to you. I'm sure you mentor a lot of women entrepreneurs. So what really is your 2 cents to them? What do you tell them not to, so that they don't give up and they carry on?
So I think the biggest barrier between our dreams and ourselves is lack of perseverance. You can't really time success. You have to be at it, and keep walking. So first thing is continue to walk. Second most important thing is being positive. Being positive about life possibilities is when things happen. So giving up is never an option, because if you persevere, it happens. So I'm very happy to say that out of so many things which keep happening, there is a girl who took a 10-year break after her wedding for nursing her child. And as she came back, she found a lot of her male colleagues had gone ahead in race. She came back, she started as one of the analysts with me. And she was so passionate that I want to come back, get back what I lost. In 5 years, she is leading the charts in terms of whatever Asia Money ratings and business. Of course, it converts into your packages. So there is possibility. And this is what, of course, I keep telling myself also. While she's running a business for 20 years, I'm running my business as me for 2 years. I need to give that 20 years to myself, and above all, like how men, when they fail, they don't go into a cage. Why should we go into a cage? And because we should not fail, we shouldn't do. I really want to take my mental barriers off, and something which really helped me, I want to share that. At 56, I went for an Everest base camp. And every day that I was walking on the craters, thin air, all my inhibitions about what I can't do just kept breaking. And if I can do that to my physical self, why can't I just break my own barriers? So for each of us, the distance between our dreams, our success, and us is only us. It's not circumstances. We create our circumstances, and success is here to come.
So believe in yourself.
Soumya, the fear of failure, has it dispelled, has it gone away from what it was when you had started off and after the fundraise that you have? How confident are you feeling about the business?
So I think failure is something that as an entrepreneur, you actually have to deal with and overcome. You have to overcome that fear, because without that, you will just not be able to move ahead. I'd just like to say a couple of things, in terms of just entrepreneurship. If any of you out here are looking at that, I just had a couple of thoughts which I just wanted to share. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you're going to have to think about 5 things which I called first principles. FIRST, each one stands for something. The F stands for being future-oriented. And this is whether you are thinking of entrepreneurship or even in a corporate career, you have to think about what the future is going to look like. You cannot live in the present. Entrepreneurs are solving for problems that other people in the room haven't seen yet. So you have to develop that mindset. The second I is for investing in yourself. Because for a lot of people, you keep caring for everybody else, your clients, your employees, but frankly, if you don't invest in your own mental health, and I think mental health is extremely important here, you're going to do a huge disservice because everyone is looking at you as the founder to be that visionary and carry everyone else along. R is for risk-taking. You cannot be an entrepreneur unless you're ready to really take that risk, that leap of faith. S is for self-awareness, self-belief. We've had both this panel and the earlier one talk about that because without that, you cannot, again, move ahead. So ensure that you are very self-aware about what you can and can't do. But my motto has always been have no regrets. So whatever you do, do it in the best possible way. And T is for team. You cannot build a business solo. What you've also seen is the reason why there's so much hesitancy about why are we not seeing women out there creating huge businesses is because they're unable to scale. The unable to scale, the access and the ability to scale comes because of mindset and capital. But once you have the capital, you have to build the team. Without that, you cannot move forward. So just a piece of advice, think of first principles if you really want that burning ambition to create scale and a sustainable business for the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.